Hello everyone, welcome to the third video in the factor series. In this video, we are going to review the momentum factor funds in India. In the last 2 weeks, we saw value funds and also the size factor funds in India. The surprising thing in the value funds was that none of the funds in India, except like two funds, have any value exposures. And in the size, it was kind of like the contrary. Almost all funds, that is, all small cap funds, were giving the size exposure, that is, the size factor exposures in India. So in this video, let's look at whether momentum factor funds in India actually give you momentum exposure. So let's start off with just exploring how many funds are there in the momentum factor category. So in the smart beta filter, I've just clicked momentum here. So you have about like 45 funds, but a lot of funds have like different versions. So for example, if you take just Motilal Oswal, right? So you have regular version and direct version. So the in terms of like unique funds, it should be less than like around 20 funds or even less than that. Um, when you just order it by AUM, you can see that there are only two funds. You can see like in the top six, right? That is the Quant Momentum and the Samco Active Momentum Fund. When I went through all the momentum funds in India, right, the surprising thing for me was that there are only two active momentum funds in India. So you don't have a lot of options to choose with. When you compare this to even value funds or even Nippon, like not the Nippon, the small cap funds in India, you have a lot of options, especially in the size factor category. But in momentum, you only have two options when it comes to active funds. Although like there are a lot of passive funds here, like UPI or the Motilal Oswal, but when it comes to the active funds, you don't have a lot of options. So you're just stuck with the Quant and the Samco momentum active funds in India. So just like like just pure performance wise, right? I think currently they seem to be at the same place, but Quant momentum had it at its own bull run in the last 1 year. But going to the main question, right? Do they give you any pure momentum factor exposure? And the answer to that question is not really. So the way we define momentum is going long or like 12-month return except the last month is how we define our own momentum factor, right? So basically the portfolio is constructed like going long on stocks with a 12-month return, the positive 12-month return except the last month, and going short on stocks with a negative 12-month return except the last month. The momentum definition for these two firms or these two funds might differ, but if you just look at pure momentum factor, that is the academic definition that I mentioned, they don't give you like the pure momentum exposure. When you go into the style boxes, I think one thing we saw in the factors, that is the exposures, is the Samco active momentum. It has size factor exposure, and also like one momentum, it has a huge quality exposure, like one beta to the quality and the low wall factor. So for the Samco, we can expect it to have like small caps in it because it is giving you almost like zero point 0.8 to exposure to the size factor, right? And that's what we are also seeing here. So when you look at the Samco one, it is giving you a positive, that is the low market cap. It has small cap exposure in it. And one thing to notice is this momentum uh, analysis here. We are showing that Samco is on the higher end, whereas the quant momentum fund is on the lower end of the momentum factor itself. So the reason being is that the quant momentum itself, it is very concentrated with just 26 stocks in it. So if you take the median, that's what we are plotting in the style boxes. The median stock in quant momentum has less returns than the median stock in the Nippon India, that is the Nifty 50 index fund. So that is something to know about, which is the concentration of the quant momentum compared to the Samco active momentum fund. Now that we understood like how many funds are there in the active space, basically there are only two funds in the momentum factor in India. Let's look at which funds in India are actually giving you proper momentum exposure. So if you just order it by just momentum factor beta, um, all the funds are just pure passive funds. So you can see Nifty Mid Cap 150 Momentum, again an index fund. Can here also an index fund. All the top funds which are giving you pure momentum factor are all index funds. So let me just take like five funds here. I'll also pick another fund. Okay, I'll pick the ICICI one. And if I take it to asset comparer again, let's see which funds here give you the highest momentum exposure. So you can see performance wise, pretty much all of them are similar because all of them are tracking the same benchmark, right? So for example, if you take mid cap 150 momentum 50 as an example, Tata and Edelweiss, they are tracking the same Nifty mid cap 150 momentum or 50 index, right? So the performance will be same. So in terms of performance, looks like they are the same. And the good thing here is we can see a consistent exposure that is like a zero point 0.4 factor beta to the momentum factor, which is good news that you are getting the risk exposures to the momentum factor beta, which is what is expected when you're buying a momentum factor. According to if you expect it to have like the academic definition of momentum, this is what you expect, and you get that through passive momentum funds in India. And if we quickly go to the style boxes, I expect all of them to be on the high momentum side of the style box, and which is rightfully so when you compare it to Nifty 50. All of them are on the right side, that is the high momentum side of things. And I think that kind of brings us to the end of the video. What we saw initially was that not a lot of funds, lot of active momentum funds are in India, which is kind of something to think about, especially for maybe fund managers to give more diversity in the momentum factor space. Um, and when it comes to the factor exposures, if you as an if you're an investor who's expecting to get has high momentum factor beta, the only options that you have are the passive index funds, which in terms of fees are also very cheap compared to, let's say, so I think the average fees here is like zero point 0.4 is what I can see here, right? 0.46, 0.41. But when you compare it to, let's say, a quant momentum fund or like a Samco active fund, you are getting like an expense ratio of 2%, right? Which is almost five times the expense ratio uh, compared to the passive funds in India, right? So that brings us to the end of the video. Thanks a lot for watching. See you next time.